Hello skate family and welcome back to the Moxi Skates YouTube channel. Today is about skate maintenance and I will be going over how to change and clean your bearings in 8 easy steps. I might be over-explaining things a little bit in this video, but that's because we want to make sure we're explaining as much as possible about how bearings work and why this process works for cleaning your bearings. If you already know about bearings and you just need a little refresher on how to clean them, you can jump to the timestamp below. If you're just looking for direction on how to remove your old bearings and insert new ones, you can skip steps 3 through 5. First, let's talk about reasons why you might need to change or clean your bearings. We are exposed to all sorts of terrain and debris while we skate, whether it be sand, mud, dirt, moisture, water. Water, moisture, you get the point. Let's say you're skating down the beach path, as we all see on Instagram, and you start to notice that you're not going as fast as you were before, or your wheels don't feel like they're smoothing nicely. Maybe it's because you got sand in your bearings. I live in the Midwest. It tends to be a little bit dewy in the mornings and late at night. We do get a lot of rain certain seasons. Sometimes the paths get these like berries that drop off the trees and then you're rolling through these berries and you're getting chunks of berries in your wheels. We also have muddy seasons and there's dirt here. I know out in other areas there's a lot of sand and winds that can blow stuff into your bearings and wheels. There are many reasons why our bearings can get dirty, but basically when they stop working properly, they need to be changed or cleaned. A huge cause of bearings seizing up is from water, so we highly recommend not skating on wet roads or paths and try not to skate in the rain. I've done it before, can be fun, but it could cause a little bit of havoc on your skate parts. You might feel like your bearings are trash, but it's possible that they just need to be cleaned. Sometimes cleaning bearings can make them good as new, so I like to try to start there, and if there's just no hope, then they end up in the trash and I get new ones. First, let's go over what you need to change and clean your bearings. Obviously, start with the bearings part. Hopefully you got that. Then you're gonna want a tool. This is the Y4 tool. It doesn't have to be the Y4 tool, but as long as there's a 1/2-inch socket on it to get your wheels off, that's most important. You can also use a 1/2-inch socket wrench or tool that you can get from like the hardware store. You will need a small razor, pin, or needle. This is to get the bearing shields off, and we'll talk about that later. A plastic cup to collect all the bits and pieces so you don't lose them. A plastic container that you probably don't care about perhaps because we're going to be washing our bearings in this. There's also a really cool kit from Bones Bearings. They have a plastic kind of water bottle looking thing that they use for bearing cleaning. If you have that, that's an awesome tool, and now is when you're going to want to use it. And then you're going to want to use the highest percent of isopropyl alcohol that you can find, or acetone. It's not a bad idea to have gloves. Acetone and isopropyl alcohol can be kind of harsh on your skin and fingernails. I'm getting my nails done in 2 days, so I'll survive. But really though, if you want to be extra cautious, use a pair of gloves. Paper towels for cleanup, a piece of candy in case you get hungry, a candle for ambiance. You're also going to want bearing lube. This is pretty important with the process. Bones makes a great bearing lube. There's also plenty of other brands out there, so as long as you have a good quality lube, you should be good to go. That sounded kind of sexual. Whatever. So last time I used these wheels, I had skated in Austin, Texas in the rain. Not recommended, but it made my bearings not spin as nicely as they used to. So they're still spinning, but they're kind of slowing down a bit faster than they should. This is usually a sign that your bearings are starting to go bad. Also, if they make a lot of noise when you spin them and they're not spinning for a long period of time and they stop abruptly or quickly, that's also another sign that your bearings might be going bad. So the first step is taking your wheels off your skates if they're not off already. I'm going to be using my 1/2-inch socket on my Y4 tool. Again, you can use a different 1/2-inch socket or wrench to get these off. I'm using righty-tighty, lefty-loosey to get them off. Sometimes when they come brand new from the manufacturer, the nuts can be on pretty tight, so you might need to put a little bit of muscle behind it. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to get off the nuts. And I'm going to be throwing this in my cup for saving my bits and pieces. Now there are tools out there for getting bearings out. They're called bearing pulls. There's one from Bones Bearings, and then there's also bearing presses. Those are a little bit more heavy duty. If you don't have either of those, like myself, you're gonna have to take your bearings out using the trucks on your skates. So we're gonna be using the axle of the truck. You're gonna want to just barely put the tip of the axle into the bearing. So where this hole is, you're gonna insert just a little bit, not too far, and then you're gonna pull back. And it pulls the bearing out. So now for the other side, it tends to be a little bit trickier because you have to go in a little bit further, but not too far. And pull back. Sometimes it can be a little tough. You need to put some muscle into it. There we go. So again, just barely putting it in, pulling back. Oh. Okay, it's fine. Oh, there we go. Sometimes getting your bearings out can be the hardest part, honestly, because depending on the wheel and the wheel well, sometimes they are a little bit more rigid and don't want to flex enough to get the bearings out, but trust me, they will come out. Sometimes you just have to put a little bit of muscle into it, and they should, they should pop out. So now we have our bearings out of our wheels. And you might notice that there's this little shield or rubber piece on the outside of the bearing. Where do you think you're going? So what this shield does is protect the actual ball bearings inside the bearing itself. So if you didn't know, bearings are responsible for making your wheel spin. They're this little device that has these little steel ball bearings inside, or ceramic. And once it spins, it helps it continuously spin. But when those balls get gunked up with dirt and debris, things like that, or just moisture, they can stop spinning freely and kind of get stuck. So when you go to spin your wheel, that's when it starts kind of slowing down or not spinning altogether. So this little rubber shield on the outside protects those ball bearings as much as it can from getting dirty or from getting exposed to moisture. The best way to get these off is using a pin or needle or a little razor blade like an X-Acto knife edge. So I'm going to be using a little piece from an X-Acto knife. You want to just barely insert the blade or the pin on the very edge of the bearing. So you just want to insert a little bit. You want to try not to actually puncture the shield. You want to just insert it along the edge. And when you pull back, it should lift up. You should start to see it lift up. Should just come right out like that fairly easily. I do want to mention there are other bearings that have, I had one, oh, okay, yeah. There are another type of shield. This one has a metal shield on the outside, so you can see it's quite different from the rubber shield. Unfortunately, these shields are permanent, so you cannot remove them to clean them. However, you can try soaking them in one of these solutions to try to break up some of that debris if you really want to save them. But if they're in really rough shape, like these are in really rough shape, they're not spinning very much at all. So these, for example, I'm just going to trash them because I think even if I put in the time of cleaning them, they're still not going to be very good for me. So I'm just going to chuck them. Anyway, so back to our rubber shields. Still taking these bad guys out. Well, good guys, actually. Just inserting a little bit and pulling back, and it should lift up like that. Now I'm going to try to keep all of my bearing shields in my plastic cup here so I don't lose them, because it is kind of easy to lose track of these. By the way, I'm just curious, does anyone have any good stories of reasons why their bearings might have gone bad or started seizing up? I don't really have any good stories, but when I was skating in Austin and it was raining, it was kind of fun, and it's a good memory because we were filming some tricks at street spots. And everyone was still skating in the rain too, so it was kind of fun. So it's a nice memory. But I was just wondering if anyone might have any fun, rememberable moments of what they were doing that possibly could have ruined their bearings, like skating through sand or mud or water, or I don't know, jumping in a pool with their skates on, something. Leave a comment below if there's a story that you want to share about how you might have trashed your bearings. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. Now you can clean these shields if you want to. So like mine are kind of gunky, and I'll just take a piece of paper towel and a little bit of the alcohol. And I'll just kind of wipe it off a little bit. And it's good to go. They don't really have to be cleaned, but if you want them to be extra squeaky clean, it's not a bad idea to take the little extra step. Now that we have the shields off and we're exposing the ball bearings, we can start the cleaning process. So I'm going to put them in my trusty container. Once you have all your bearings in there, you want to put just enough so they're kind of soaking in there. And it's not a bad idea to let these soak for a little bit, maybe while you're cleaning up your shields or cleaning up your skates if they got a little dirty, or you just have another chore to do. You can let them soak for a little bit. I'm just going to clean my shields. All right, they're pretty well shaken up, so I'm going to get them out of there, but first I want to lay down a couple layers of paper towels because you want them to be nice and dry before you lube them up. How hard is it to open a container? If you don't want to fish them out with your hands, especially if you have any like cuts or anything on your fingers, this can burn. So if that's the case, you can, kind of put the lid on a little bit and then dump this out, and then you'll just have the bearings left and all the liquid will be out. And sometimes if your bearings are really dirty, the water will be a pretty dark color and you'll see a lot of like floaty pieces in there. One for my hands. Okay, so I'm just gonna take a paper towel in my bearing and I'm just gonna kind of clean them up a little bit and use the paper towel to get off any like excess debris or dirt that I might see, extra gunk. Now that I got them all laid out, you want them to be completely 100% dry before you put any lube in them and then put them back in your wheels. So we're gonna let this sit for 24 hours. It can definitely dry faster than that, but it's nice to give a solid 24-hour window to be 100% certain that these are dry. The next step is you're going to take the lube that you have and you're going to put just a few drops in each bearing. This keeps all the bearings running smoothly and helps kind of limit friction within the ball bearings. All right, they're all lubed up. So I'm going to take my parts and pieces, make sure I have everything. I got my nuts and my bearing shields, and we're going to replace the bearing shields now. So they should snap in quite easily. All you do is line them up with where they were before and you press them down with your fingers and they should snap in pretty well. You should hear and feel a little snap and then it should look like it's sitting evenly. Now that all the shields are on, you're just going to want to spin them so that the oil or lube can disperse evenly and coat all of the ball bearings. I'm going to do this with each one. You get the idea. So again, you can use a bearing press or a bearing pull to get the bearings back in your wheels. But since we don't have that today, I'm going to show you the old-fashioned way by using the axles on your trucks. So you're going to want to put 2 bearings on the trucks. You're going to take the side of your wheel that has the concave in it. So if your wheels do have one side where the bearing or the wheel well sits in deeper than the other side, so like you can see this one is a bit more shallow than this side. So the side that has the more concave side is the side you're going to put down first. And you may need to stand up for this because it does require a little bit of muscle. You're just going to push down. And it should go in pretty easy. Oh. Too far! Okay, if that happens, just pop it back up. Get that one out and just try again. You may want to stand up for this and put a little bit of weight into it if you need to, but you want to just push down until the bearing slides in, and you should be able to feel that. I'm going to do it again with the other side. Just push down. And they should look like they're fitting very nicely in there. If they're not, or they look a little bit crooked, you want to try to fix that, otherwise they're not going to roll nice and even. Now that our bearings are back in our wheels, the next step is fairly simple, and I bet you guessed it. It's putting our wheels back on our skate. So it's the reverse of what we did before. You're gonna put your wheels back on the axle of the trucks. You're gonna take your axle nut, and you're just gonna spin it righty-tighty a few times until it catches some threads. Then I'm gonna go back with my Y4 socket, and I'm going to tighten them almost all the way down. You want to tighten them until they stop spinning pretty naturally. You don't want to keep spinning to the point where you feel like you're forcing it. Once it stops turning, you're going to do a half of a turn in the opposite direction to loosen them, and they should spin nicely. So you're going to tighten it almost all the way down. And then half a turn back to loosen. We do this because you don't want the nut to be so tight that it's actually rubbing on the bearing, because that will slow down the actual wheel spin or make it stop early. So the half spin away will help loosen the nut so that it can actually spin freely. If you have a little bit of a wiggle in your wheel, that's perfectly normal and actually recommended, because then you'll get a nice spin on your wheel. If they're like extra rattly and you feel like you can actually hear them shaking when you skate, they're probably a little bit too loose, and you want to tighten them up just a little bit. Okay, now all of our components are back on our skates. Everything seems to be in order, so we should be good to go to get back out there and skating again. Of course, if you have any other questions about this process, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and we do our best to answer those questions. Other than that, this about sums up our video. Give us a like, give us a follow. We make videos all the time about skate maintenance, skate tutorials, just overall skate talk. If there's something that you want us to go over next time, leave it in the comments. I hope this video is helpful in getting you back out there skating again if your bearings were all clogged up. Again, I am Roller Ghoulie. Thank you so much for watching the Moxi Skate YouTube channel.